Hello and welcome. Thank you for attending the third workshop of a three-part workshop series on the topic of preparing for your asylum interview. My name is Jesse Valentine. I'm a licensed graduate social worker in the state of Minnesota. I am a social worker at the Center for Victims of Torture. I run the community programs and engagement services offered by the St. Paul Healing Center located in St. Paul, Minnesota. We will be presenting this workshop in English. Legal disclaimer. Disclaimer, this video publication does not provide legal advice. This publication and the information included in it are not intended to serve as a substitute for consultation with a licensed attorney. This video publication is intended for educational and informational purposes only and may not be current, wholly accurate, or complete. Specific legal issues, concerns, and conditions always require the advice of appropriate, competent legal professionals. You should not take or refrain from taking any legal action based upon the information in this workshop without first seeking professional counsel. Medical advice disclaimer. Disclaimer, this video publication and the information included does not provide medical advice. The information included, but not limited to, text, graphics, images, and other material contained in this publication are for educational and informational purposes only. No material on this site is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This publication is not meant to offer exhaustive lists of mental health coping strategies and resources. If you are in a mental health crisis, contact your mental health provider or contact 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for suicide prevention and confidential emotional support. Call or text 988 or visit the website www.988lifeline.org. Always seek the advice of your mental health provider or physician with any questions or before undertaking a new mental health care regime, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have read or viewed on this publication. The content should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any mental health, medical, or physical condition. The use of this publication, preparing for your asylum interview before, during, and after, and use of the internet for communication with nonprofit agency, the Center for Victims of Torture, will not establish a patient-client relationship, and messages containing confidential or time-sensitive information should not be sent to nonprofit agency, the Center for Victims of Torture. Some gentle reminders before we begin this workshop. You are a survivor. You can do difficult things. You know your story. There are people who believe you. There are people who love you. There are people who support you. These workshops are intended to increase workshop participants' knowledge of the asylum process and how it impacts mental health and functioning. Information presented here is general, so in actual preparation for an asylum interview or hearing, the asylum applicant should follow the advice of their attorney. If the asylum applicant does not have an attorney, it is always advised for an asylum applicant to seek counsel of a licensed and practicing lawyer. Grounding exercise. We are now about to begin discussing the complex topic of immigration and asylum. It is helpful to begin this workshop by becoming present in the moment, calm, and focused. This is intended to help reduce anxiety and overwhelm. Grounding exercises are a way to firmly anchor oneself in the present. Grounding exercises are helpful for many situations where you may find yourself becoming overwhelmed or distracted by distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings. The grounding exercise is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This video is around 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Ensure you are seated comfortably before we begin. If you notice at any point in this workshop you are becoming distracted emotionally activated, or distressed by memories, thoughts, or feelings, I encourage you to take a few deep breaths to recenter and reground yourself in the present moment.
The 5-4-3-2-1 method is a grounding exercise that can help you stay in the moment and avoid negative thinking and worry. You can do this exercise anywhere, at home, at school, in the car, or even in the middle of a crowd. You can do it sitting, standing, or laying down. Counting down from 5, use your senses to list things around you. Make an effort to notice details about these things. This is how to do it. Start by breathing deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. Then slowly look at your surroundings. Find 5 things that you can see around you. Maybe you see a colorful poster on the wall, the spider web on the bookshelf, the lamp on the nightstand with the red shade, the cat sleeping peacefully on the chair, the cactus on the dresser that has finally bloomed. Then list 4 things that you can touch. The warm mug in your hands, the soft comforter on the bed, the denim of your jeans, the scratchy carpet under your feet. Next, listen for 3 things you can hear. Maybe the ticking of a clock, the quiet hum of your computer, the sound of traffic from outside. Now try to find 2 things that you can smell. The tea in your mug, the clean scent of your clothes. Finally, list 1 emotion that you feel. This is a way to ground yourself so you can feel present in the moment and in control of your surroundings. Now you try.
Now we will review terms and definitions. We reviewed terms and definitions relevant to immigration and asylum during our first workshop. We will now review these terms and definitions again before we discuss the asylum decision process. Asylum is a form of protection which allows an individual to remain in the United States instead of being removed, or otherwise called deported, to a country where past harm has occurred or fear of persecution or harm will occur if they return. Asylum seeker is someone whose request for sanctuary has not yet been processed by USCIS. Asylee is a person who has been granted asylum. Affirmative process is when a person applies for asylum within the US or at a port of entry. They must apply within 1 year of entering the US. Defensive process is when a person enters the US at a port of entry without proper legal documents, apprehended by USCBP, or are referred to an immigration judge after determined ineligible for the affirmative asylum process. USCIS is an acronym for the United States Customs and Immigration Services. An acronym is an abbreviated form of a word using the initial letters of the word and is pronounced as a word, USCIS. Port of entry. A port of entry is where a person can lawfully enter a country. It is usually at an international airport, railway stations, ship docks, and various highways along the national borders. USCCP. It is an acronym for United States Customs and Border Protection. These are the most common definitions and terms for immigration. Now we're going to start talking about the importance of having an attorney as it relates to the asylum denial rate. It is incredibly important to have an attorney. This chart illustrates statistics of U.S. asylum denial rates from 2001 to 2021 for asylum applicants who were not represented by an attorney. We are looking at 2021 data because although the asylum denial rates went down in 2022, they are not generalizable or relevant to most asylum applicants. USCIS is focused on interviewing Afghan arrivals, and their asylum process is different than it is for people coming from other countries around the world. The 2021 statistics are the most relevant. On this graph, you will see two lines. The light blue line represents asylum applicants who were not represented by an attorney. The denial rate for asylum applicants without representation is much higher than the denial rate for asylum applicants represented by a lawyer. Those represented by a lawyer is listed in the dark blue or navy color. 81% of asylum seekers not represented by an attorney were denied asylum in 2021, where the rate for asylum seekers who were represented by an attorney, the denial rate is at around 58%. Asylum decisions. What does this chart mean? Denial rates in defensive cases were 66% for individuals that were represented by an attorney. Denial rates in defensive cases were 82% for unrepresented cases, meaning people that did not have a lawyer. In contrast, both represented and unrepresented asylum seekers in the affirmative process had substantially lower denial rates. What is the defensive process? We reviewed this in the terms and definitions. The defensive process is when a person enters the United States at a port of entry along the national border without the correct documentation, without legal documentation. Whereas affirmative process is when a person enters the United States at an international airport, railway, along the national border, or through a water port of entry. The denial rates in affirmative cases were 52% for individuals that did not have an attorney represent them. The denial rates in affirmative cases were only 32% for individuals that were represented by a lawyer. So what does this mean, and what does this mean for you? That means that even for represented asylum seekers in the defensive process, they have about half as good of a chance of gaining asylum as individuals who have gone through the affirmative process with representation by an attorney. So this chart highlights the importance of having an attorney and the difference between the defensive process and the affirmative process. Asylum cases without representation. This chart shows the affirmative asylum process in orange and the defensive asylum process in green. The data starts at 2001 and ends at 2021. Affirmative asylum cases have consistently had higher attorney representation than defensive asylum cases. Shown illustrated on this chart are statistics for affirmative and defensive cases without representation. Over the past 2 decades, while affirmative asylum applications have gone down in number, the number of affirmative cases with attorney representation has gone up. During 2020 and 2021, only 4% of affirmative decisions for asylum seekers were asylum seekers that were not represented by an attorney. This means if asylum seekers go through the affirmative process and receive a denial, then end up in immigration court, they nearly always have an attorney. Higher success rates for asylum seekers in decisions involving affirmative cases can be attributed in part to more affirmative cases having an attorney present. Where can you get reliable information on immigration? Firstly, your immigration attorney. That is the most important person that you can get accurate and up-to-date, reliable information about your specific asylum case. Immigration legal organization. I have listed 3 of the immigration legal organizations that are in the United States. There are many others that are available to provide resources and support as well. The 3 most common are Immigrant Legal Resource Center, Immigrant Advocate Network, and the National Immigrant Law Center. Other places to find reliable information on immigration that is up to date is uscis.gov, which is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It is an agency of the United States Department of Homeland Security that administers the country's naturalization and immigration system. State.gov. The United States Department of State, or simply the State Department, is the executive department of the U.S. federal government responsible for the country's foreign policy and relations. ICE.gov. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations manages the nation's civil immigration detention system. The website lists and explains the ICE detention policies, policy changes, detention facility oversight, and detention standards. This is relevant information for people interested in learning about customs enforcement and detention, or relevant to those affected by or who have been apprehended by U.S. Customs Protection and Border Control or are being held in ICE detention. The last bullet point is for TRAC. TRAC is the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. It is a data gathering, data research, and data distribution organization at Syracuse University. It is the source for comprehensive, independent, and nonpartisan information about the U.S. federal immigration and enforcement system. The purpose of TRAC is to provide the American people and anyone living in the United States with information about institutions. They provide oversight on Congress, news organizations, public interest groups, businesses, scholars, and lawyers. It is comprehensive information about staffing, spending, and enforcement activities of the federal government. What are the types of affirmative asylum decisions? It can be granted, referred to immigration court. There may be a letter sent called the intent to deny, and then there's the final decision. During this workshop, we are mostly focusing our attention on the affirmative decision process. If asylum is granted, the asylee will receive a letter and completed form I-94 arrival departure record indicating that they have been granted asylum in the United States. A grant for asylum allows the asylee to apply for an employment authorization document if they do not already have one, a social security card, a green card, and for individuals that have a spouse or unmarried children under the age of 21, those immigration benefits will extend to the spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21 that were listed on the asylum application. The grant of asylum includes the spouse and minor children, provided that they were present in the United States, they were included in the asylum application. Asylees may be eligible to receive help from an organization in their geographic area funded by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Services may include financial assistance, medical assistance, employment preparation, and job placement, as well as English language training. If referred to immigration court, a referral to an immigration judge includes the spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21. As stated in the last slide, if they were included on the asylum application and are in the United States at the time of the application and interview. A referral is not a denial. This is extremely important to know. Many people are very afraid if their asylum is not granted. All this means is that the asylum interview process is not done. It requires further review by an immigration court and an immigration judge. If immigration court cannot approve an asylum claim, they will send a letter of explanation. Form I-6862, notice to appear, indicating the date and time scheduled to appear in court, is what you will be mailed if you have been referred to immigration court. If USCIS is unable to approve the asylum application during the asylum interview, that is when the decision is made by the asylum officer to move it to immigration court. The immigration judge will evaluate the asylum claim independently, and it is not required to rely on or follow the decision made by the USCIS asylum officer. Notice of intent to deny. Applicants may receive a notice of intent to deny. If the applicant has a valid legal status in the United States but are found ineligible for asylum, they will potentially receive the notice of intent to deny. The notice of intent to deny will state the reasons the applicant is ineligible for asylum. The applicant has 16 days to explain in writing either why the claim should be granted or submit new evidence to support the claim, or both. If no response is given within 16 days, the asylum claim may be denied. If the applicant responds, the asylum officer will carefully consider the response and new evidence. A final decision will be made at that point. If the claim is approved, the officer will issue a grant of asylum. If the claim is denied, the officer will issue a final denial. Final denial. The applicant will receive a notice of intent to deny and a final denial letter if the applicant does not respond to the notice within 16 days or the submitted response with the new information failed to overcome the reasons for the denial stated in the notice of intent to deny. The applicant cannot appeal the asylum officer's decision. The denial includes any dependents included on the asylum application, such as a spouse or unmarried children under the age of 21. If the asylum claim is denied, the applicant may reapply for asylum. However, they must show changed circumstances that affect the eligibility for asylum. Other options for remaining in the U.S. TPS, Temporary Protected Status. Temporary Protected Status is provided to countries where there is ongoing armed conflict, such as a civil war, an environmental disaster, such as an earthquake or hurricane, or an epidemic. There are other extraordinary or temporary conditions that do apply. During a designated period, if somebody is approved for temporary protected status, the United States is not allowed to remove or deport them. The TPS recipient can obtain an employment authorization document, or otherwise known as a work permit, and may be granted travel authorization. The Secretary of Homeland Security may designate a foreign country for TPS due to conditions in the country that temporarily prevent the country's nationals from returning safely, or in certain circumstances where the country is unable to handle the return of its nationals adequately. USCIS may grant TPS to eligible nationals of certain countries who are already in the United States. Eligible individuals without nationality, such as stateless individuals who last resided in the designated country, may also be granted TPS. TPS continued. Once granted TPS, the TPS recipient cannot be detained by the Department of Health Services on the basis of immigration status in the United States. Or Department of Homeland Security, sorry. TPS is a temporary benefit and does not lead to lawful permanent resident status. Asylum applicants can apply for TPS and asylum concurrently at the same time. Applying for TPS will not affect your asylum application. TPS and asylum applications can both be active at the same time. For instance, you can apply for asylum first, and then once the country gains TPS status, you can apply for TPS. Or you can apply for asylum and TPS at the same time. If approved for TPS, it does not change anything about the asylum application or interview process. It will not affect the asylum decision. Applying for TPS while awaiting an asylum interview can be helpful because if your asylum claim is denied, you can still remain living in the US and working in the US. If an asylum claim is denied and you have TPS, you will not be removed from the United States or detained. You can use this time to strategically work with your attorney to find alternative pathways to permanent residency in the US or explore the possibility of applying for asylum in another country. Countries that are currently designated for TPS: Afghanistan, Burma, other known as Myanmar, Cameroon, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, and Yemen. Please go to www.uscis.gov to learn more about the eligibility requirements for TPS. Applicants may apply online with or without an attorney. If you have an attorney, it is advised to talk to them before applying for TPS. TPS timeline for processing applications is currently 2 to 3 months. To receive a work permit, the process may take 2 to 6 months, which is a lot less of a wait time, generally speaking, than waiting for a work permit after applying for asylum. TPS is generally a faster way to attain an employment authorization document, otherwise known as a work permit. If an immigrant enters the U.S. through the southern or northern border, which is considered entering the U.S., quote, illegally, the immigrant can still apply for TPS and a work permit. After receiving TPS, the immigrant does have the ability to travel freely within the U.S. and outside the U.S. Attorneys advise TPS recipients to discuss any travel outside of the U.S. with them before traveling anywhere. For example, if an asylum seeker is a TPS recipient and they travel to a country near their country of origin during the asylum interview, or while they are waiting for their asylum interview, the asylum officer may bring this up. They may use this as evidence that the applicant does not have a credible fear that justifies asylum approval. Asylum and TPS are forms of protection from the United States government. There are, however, certain scenarios where it would be more appropriate to leave the U.S. For example, if a TPS asylum applicant was given an opportunity through their employer or school to travel and is supporting their employment or academic goals, this would be an example of a reason you may leave the United States for a period of time. As I mentioned, always consult with an attorney before making any travel plans outside of the U.S. while a TPS recipient. U.S. employer-sponsored work visa and employment-based green card. These are other pathways towards residency in the United States. Work visas allow a foreign national to enter and work in the United States either permanently or for a specific period of time. They must have a job offer before a person can apply for a work visa. For the employment based on a green card, there are many expectations for each category. Go to uscis.gov for detailed information about the expectations for each of the categories. For work visas, the employer sponsors the work visa by filing a petition with USCIS. The job must be on a list of eligible occupations. They must have the required education or work experience. It is possible for asylum applicants to apply for employer-sponsored work visas. It is important to consult with an attorney before beginning this process. For employment-based green cards, some examples of the expectations for priority, which is number 1, would be an extraordinary ability in the sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics, outstanding professors or researchers, or certain multinational managers and executives for international companies. Having 3 years of experience publishing materials or media exposure due to one's career accomplishments, having an advanced degree is generally required, with the exception of athletes, and having worked in the field for 10 years, or having an advanced degree and having 5 years of experience in the field. This is just an example of some of the expectations for priority workers. As I stated before, please go to uscis.gov for more detailed information and a full list of expectations. For the second way to obtain an employment based on a green card be through advanced degrees with exceptional abilities. There's preference for advanced degrees, and the expectation is 10 years of experience in a work field or an advanced degree and 5 years of experience. Having a license to practice your profession or certification for your profession or occupation, membership in a professional association, recognition for your achievements in the industry that you work in are also examples. For the third way to obtain employment-based green card is for skilled workers, professionals, and other workers. You must have at least 2 years of experience and at least a bachelor's degree in the field you plan to work in. Performing work for which qualified workers are not available in the United States is a great way to utilize the employment-based green card for the third option. It is for some specialty fields. So please go to USCIS to see all of the expectations and the list of eligible occupations for both work visas and employment-based green cards. All right, now we're going to return to talking about asylum cases in the US. It might take weeks or months to receive a decision after the asylum interview. In most cases, there is no way to expedite this. The decision will be mailed to you and to your attorney. This chart lists all of the pending cases in the United States currently from years 2012 to the year 2023, our current year. In 2023, there are 848,793 pending asylum cases in the United States. If the asylum applicant completes the interview and is still awaiting a decision after a longer than usual wait time, say for example, 1 or more years, the attorney may request that USCIS make a decision. This is up to the discretion of the attorney, and the decision will be based on a variety of factors that affect your individual case. Immediately after the interview, it is normal to feel exhausted, discouraged, overwhelmed, excited, or anxious. It is important to make a plan to do something relaxing after the interview. Remember that you were prepared and you did your best. Some ideas of ways to spend time after the interview are getting tea or coffee with friends or family, eating a meal with friends or family, having physical touch. Getting a hug from someone who loves and cares for you is extremely important. It is important to feel and know that you are loved and cared about. It is a great way to reground yourself in the present moment. Other things to do after the interview would be to go to a church or a mosque and pray, to set up a time to meet with your priest or imam ahead of time. Meet with them after the interview if you think it could be helpful. After the interview, in most cases, the decision will be either granting asylum or referring the case to immigration court. You will get a notice to go to the court for a master calendar hearing in about 90 days if your case was referred to immigration court. Even if asylum is not granted, no one is removed or deported from their asylum interview. If asylum is not granted, that does not mean that you will never receive asylum. Talk with your attorney about the next step. It's important to check in with your attorney regularly. Set up check-in points with your attorney every 1 to 2 months. And then after 6 months, meet with them quarterly. This was a suggestion by advocates for Human Rights Staff Attorney Kim Bosch. Your attorney may set up a different schedule for check-in points. It's important to make a self-care plan. In the first and second workshops, we talked about the importance of having daily routines, sleep rituals, and eating regular meals. Now, in this third workshop, we are going to discuss the importance of social support, religious or spiritual practices, and utilizing relaxation and grounding techniques. Social support could include friends, family, soccer, running, or other support, going to cultural events, or attending music and arts events or activities. It is important to have social supports and be surrounded by those that love you, but especially important to establish those relationships when new to the US or living in a new community. Without support, people end up isolating, which causes depression, anxiety, and hopelessness. Community is what makes people strong. A strong and resilient community relies on each other so that they feel loved and supported. I encourage people to establish relationships with their community once arriving to the US and not waiting until a disaster or an emergency comes up to start reaching out for social support. It is much easier to reach out when you are in an emergency situation if you've already established that relationship with the community organization, religious organization, or community group. Religious or spiritual practices. Research shows that being able to continue religious activities and rituals from your culture is associated with resilience and the ability to cope during the resettlement process. You could go to church, mosque, another religious institution, a meditation center, or a community center. Also, it's important to remember that there are professional support, community leaders, speaking with an imam, priest, or other religious leader. If you have a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a case manager, they are all there to support you through this process. Other professionals may be a community health worker or an arms worker. As we near the end of this workshop, we are going to do the square breathing exercise that we have practiced the last two workshops. Practicing the same exercise can be helpful in familiarizing yourself with a new skill. It becomes easier to use the more often one practices it. This video is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. Please ensure that you are seated comfortably before we begin.
Take a moment to create awareness to your breath and follow along as we do 4 square breathing exercise. Relax your body and start by picturing a box with equal sides. Now inhale through your nose along the top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold going down the side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your nose along the bottom line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold going up the side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember to do this for at least 3 to 5 cycles. Visit our website and mobile app for more tools.
All right, so we are about to end our workshop, but I would like to share some resources with you. First, we will start with what is a QR code? You may have seen them lots of different places and may not know how to use one, so I can explain that to you now. A QR code is a machine scannable image that can instantly be read using a smartphone camera. Every QR code consists of a number of black squares and dots which represent certain pieces of information. When a smartphone scans this code, it translates that information. The Community Programs and Engagement QR code brings you to a link tree with links to YouTube videos for mental health coping strategies, skills, health content, and you can access the YouTube Preparing for Asylum interviews from this link tree as well. Since you are accessing this digitally, you can save the link tree as a bookmark on your mobile web browser for easy access. How to use a QR code. Open your phone camera, then position the phone so that the code appears on the screen. Tap the yellow notification that appears on the screen and go to the link tree. What is a link tree? A link tree allows a person to create a personalized and customizable page that houses all the important links to share with people in an easy way. A link tree is helpful because lots of different videos, audio, and website content can be viewed in one place. Check out CVT community_engagement. All right, please use the QR code that's on the next slide to take a brief anonymous survey. Please provide open and honest feedback. Surveys help us to understand if our digital content is helpful, if it's relevant and useful to the people viewing the videos. Please scan the QR code to go to the short survey. Thank you again for attending the third workshop in the series Preparing for Your Asylum Interview Before, During, and After. We hope that you regularly check out CVT's YouTube channel for new content.